In the summer of 1984, Scott Evans was a member of a recruiting class that made a huge impact on the Campbell Baseball program. The team had competed on the Division I level for less than a decade and was starting its first year as a member of the newly formed Big South Conference. Fast forward 4 years, Scott and his teammates had averaged 30 wins per year, won 75% of their league contest, and claimed the program's first Big South title, albeit one that did not yet result in an NCAA postseason berth. At Campbell, Scott was mentored by two former big league pitchers, Koonce and Mike Caldwell, and played against some of the country's top collegiate programs. Not only did Scott and his teammates find success over the course of their careers, but they formed a bond that continues to this day. After his playing career ended, Scott began work in the family business, but has stayed in close contact with his alma mater through the years. My name is Stan Cole, class of 1987, and this is our next installment of Tales from the Creek, where we visit with the people who've made this place special over the years. I'm delighted today to be joined by former Campbell Baseball standout Scott Evans. Welcome to Tales from the Creek, Scott, and thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
Hey, Stan, thanks for having me today. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you and speak for a few minutes about our love for Campbell.
Scott, let's just start out at the beginning. Tell us about growing up in coastal North Carolina and how you got started playing sports.
So I grew up down in Brunswick County, which is an area now that a lot of people know about. It used to be a really small area. It's in between Wilmington and Myrtle Beach. And had a normal childhood, growing up following older uncles around that were 10, 12, 14 years older than me that sometimes on a Sunday afternoon would let me shoot some hoops in the high school gym with them and let me tag along. And everything really started with my parents. Probably until I came here to Campbell, they were at every game I ever played in, if they could be at every game. My mother was a middle school teacher and retired 30-some years later, and then my dad, who's also a Campbell grad, went back to work in the family agency 30 years before I got there. He retired 5 years ago, but up until that time, that last 31, 32 years, we kind of tag team and grew the agency and, think we had some successes in doing that. A lot of that may be that I thought we, did a great job in what we were doing in the insurance world in the state and on the East Coast, but some of that may have just been the geographic area that we were in, right? We're in a really area that was growing between Wilmington and Myrtle, so very thankful for those opportunities.
Scott, that area, southeastern North Carolina, has produced some of the best athletes, not just this state has ever seen, but maybe the nation has ever seen. You go to names like Roman Gabriel, Sonny Jurgensen, Michael Jordan, he was okay, and a slew of baseball players. What's in the water down there?
I didn't think about this until right now, but I had a beef with my dad. When I was a freshman, he missed a high school basketball game that I was playing in to go watch Jordan play at Laney, and I joked with him about that. But he did the right thing by doing that. So
is there something about the junior programs, the high school programs down there, middle school sports? What is it about that has produced it's been such a fertile place for great athletes to come out of that area?
Well, like as an example, in the Brunswick County area, Coach Mike Alderson, the legendary baseball coaches, he came in right after I graduated. But then when I went back and helped out West Brunswick, where I went to high school, on two different stints over the course of about 30 years, those guys had their hands in the feeder programs down to the elementary, middle school area. So he knew everybody by the time they got to high school. Another example of that would have, Coach Linwood Hedgepeth, who's another legendary coach from Whiteville. Coach Hedgepeth, I never played for him, but I played against him and against Whiteville at West, and then I played American Legion baseball for 4 years for Brunswick County against them. And as an example, he was a Clemson guy. And so my opportunity to go to Clemson and play baseball was because of him. It really wasn't even because of my high school coach. And so then you get into New Hanover County. I didn't know a lot about Coach Brogdon that won all the high school titles in basketball, football, and baseball at New Hanover. But a lot of people, especially in the Campbell world, know the name Buck Hardy.
Sure do.
So Buck Hardy, who's in the Hall of Fame for Campbell, Buck Hardy was the head baseball coach at New Hanover when I was at West. He was also the head Legion baseball coach for Post 10, and I played against him in high school in Legion ball for 4 years. He never, as a Campbell guy, he never tried to directly tell me when I was, at my junior year, I kind of knew I was going to have some opportunities, right? But he pulled me aside after a game at Legion Stadium in summer ball at the end of my junior year, and he's like, well, where are you thinking about going? And I'm like, and I told him a couple of opportunities, and I told him that Coach had been to see me pitch a couple times in high school that year, and he had shown up for a couple of Legion games. And he's like, well, I'm a Campbell guy. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but Cal's the real deal. Like, you're a country boy from Brunswick County. You would probably feel really comfortable in that area. And he said, Cal really develops talent, and I think that would be a really good fit for you.
Well, down there, extending into to New Hanover County, especially folks more recently would know the name Trot Nixon. Came out of New Hanover, of course, was a superstar with the Red Sox. Tommy Green back in the 80s was a first-round draft pick of the Atlanta Braves and then pitched for the bulk of his career for the Phillies. But let's dial it back just a little bit. I'm always curious about this, Scott, because when I'm growing up, it's who you are in the backyard or who you are in the driveway. Who were some of your favorite players? Anybody you wanted to play like or wanted to be while you were growing up?
So, growing up during that time when stick and ball sports, baseball, basketball, football, right? That was so, I played from the time I was 6, 7 years old, I played all three. And my father was really responsible for me. I call like pitching is kind of a specialty in the baseball world, shooting a basketball in the basketball world, punt, special teams on the football field. So my dad would come home in the afternoons when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, and depending on the season, we'd spend 30, 45 minutes or an hour in the backyard. One of the things I remember that he did was, you remember the tossbacks in baseball?
Absolutely.
He took that and he took a pair of scissors and he cut the ribbon. He cut the top of the ribbon out and he moved it down and made the strike zone only the bottom half.
Right.
And he said, this is where you're going to have to live, right? It's a little different than Elevate now at 100. We didn't throw 100 back then.
Correct.
So, but it was either that, coming home and, taking 500 shots in the backyard and him saying, did you hit 10 free throws? Well, no, sir. Well, go shoot 10 free throws. I'll cut the light on. You can come in when you make 10. And then, speaking of Trot, so Trot's older brother, Bud Nixon, he was someone I looked up to. I met Bud Nixon at a state pump, pass, and kick competition that we were both in. He was 12 and I was 8. And it was in Charlotte. And I knew he was a, big-time athlete at New Hanover. I knew of his dad, Dr. Nixon, who was like one of the first open-heart surgeons in Wilmington. But a lot of people don't know Bud was a really good athlete too, okay? And so I remember meeting him at that pump, pass, and kick competition. So during football season, my dad, he would say, put the glove down. We're not going to throw. You've thrown enough for this year, right? We don't throw 10 months a year.
Right.
Put the basketball down. During football season, it was either passing, it was kicking, or it was punting. And so, when I got in high school, those were kind of things that even as a freshman, the varsity didn't have. And so, kind of specializing in those things and my dad pushing me in those directions really benefited me in high school.
A lot of people don't now, with the overwhelming amount of sports that are on television and are available for consumption and stuff, I remember when we were growing up in the 70s, the punt, pass, and kick competition, the finals were during the semifinals were during the AFC and NFC championship games. They showed them on TV. They probably were pre-recorded and stuff like that. But it was a big deal. You could go to the local high school and have a local qualifier. We did it at our elementary school. And then if you made it to the high school and did it under the lights, that was a big deal. I remember I had a little brochure, and it had Ken Anderson of the Cincinnati Bengals showing taking photographs and showing proper passing form. And then Chester Markole of the Packers was the kicker, which was kind of funny. He was a soccer style kicker, and then it showed him kicking soccer style and straight on, and he wasn't as good straight on. And then of course Ray Guy, who was the first punter to go into the Hall of Fame in the NFL. But that was a big deal back then, and just participation and things like that. Did you have a pitcher or anybody that you looked up to and thought, you liked the way they pitched, or, did you pattern your pitching motion after anybody like that, Scott?
You know what? Really not. And this is really crazy. Baseball definitely was my best sport. But basketball was my true love. Mm-hmm. And I had an opportunity to go punt at East Carolina and maybe play some baseball there as well. And I had some D2 offers to play basketball in college. And one of the distractions for me was I came along when the 3-point line wasn't in high school.
Right.
So that would have been, I would have loved to have gone back and been able to have a 3-point line in high school like they have now. That would have been a little different for me, being a little smaller. I was never a quick enough player to play at the D1 level as a point guard. I was a shooting guard, and I'm a little undersized for a shooting guard at the college game. But probably at a D2 level, I could have held my own on the shooting side, but I would have been killed defensively. So,
well, back there in the early '80s, there was this guy named Bird that played for the Celtics. Was number 33. What do you recall? What jersey number you wore in high school basketball?
I do. That was the number that I wore. Funny story. I actually, when I was a junior in high school, I wrote Larry Bird a letter.
Wow. And
I mailed it to Larry Bird, French Lick, Indiana. My mother found out what the zip code was. About 6 months later, he wrote me back.
Holy cow.
On a postcard, and he sent me a Polaroid that I have framed, and he's leaving the golf course in shorts and a polo shirt, and he's leaning on the front of his Mercedes, and he signed it at the bottom of it, and that's one of the things that I have. That's one of the things that I really take a lot of pride in having. But, I was like, Mom, I want to mail this letter. And she was like, well, just mail it to him and see what happens. And it took a while, but he actually wrote me back. So he was, he was the type of player that I wanted to be in every sport, right? Like, I think that was one of the things that a lot of us guys that came to Campbell had in common. And I think that, not to get ahead, but I think that a lot of guys that have come to Campbell and played sports, but especially the group that we came in, that we've had some success after sports in our careers, I attribute that a lot to our personalities. The old school guys would call them dirtbags. I call them, they're just grinders.
Right.
And, when one of the things that I was the most proud of about, the high school teams that I played on in all three sports, and especially it was something special about those teams when we were here in the mid to late 80s, is we were a team that nobody wanted to play.
Right.
Right? Like we beat up on North Carolina as much as they beat up on us. We'd get on the bus and go play Clemson, Georgia, South Carolina. We'd play anybody. Cal would play anybody. Kind of like when we're done with this today, we're going to walk over to the baseball field and it's opening, first pitch at 5 o'clock against Cal Poly, and their top 25 program, right? So you got two of the best mid-majors in America opening day that are playing against each other. And Coach Marks, he did that for a reason, right?
Sure.
He wants to be tested. But, I think that reputation kind of started even back with Cal, right? And even started with the Perrys that were here and Buck Hardy. I think Campbell's always been known as a group of guys that believed in each other, that played the game the right way, and they were always a group of guys that you didn't really want to play.
Absolutely.
Like they were going to outwork you.
So, you know, back in the 70s when we were growing up, you know, our interests usually did follow the sport of the season. But you found some time to do some other things in high school other than sports. Tell us a little bit about your creative musical background.
Oh man, I don't know if you could call it creative musical background, but anyway, I started when I was in the 3rd grade playing trombone.
Wow.
And continued playing that through high school, and you know, I'd get to play on homecoming night. Would be the only time I'd get to play on a football field, as you know, because you're playing. I did get to march in the Azalea Festival parade every year and do that in April, and that was always fun. And then we actually had a jazz ensemble for 1 and 2 trumpet, trombone, and we would travel around. And my band instructor, Mr. Furr, when somebody that he knew that was pretty well known that would come in town, you know, I've seen B.B. King, a guy that a lot of people don't hear about or don't think about anymore, but one of my favorites, a trumpet player called Maynard Ferguson.
Oh, yeah.
It was incredible.
Gonna Fly Now, the theme from Rocky.
The theme from Rocky, right? And so, yeah, so, you know, lot of other diverse interests, love jazz. I grew up with parents and grandparents on both sides because my parents were really young when I was born, right? And so I spent a lot of time with grandparents and uncles and aunts. And I grew up in homes that, there was country music, Southern rock, but there was as much blues and Motown as anything. And so I grew up loving all kinds of music, and I still listen to everything today.
Well, and of course, North Carolina is the birthplace of 3 of jazz musicians, giants. Billy Strayhorn's from Hillsboro. He wrote "Take the A Train" that Duke Ellington's orchestra recorded. Yeah. You know, of course, Thelonious Monk from Rocky Mount. John Coltrane, the greatest saxophone player ever, was born in Hamlet. Lived in High Point before he moved to Philadelphia. So it's fertile ground down here for creativity and sports. And it sounds like Scott Evans, were it not for a really good pitching arm, he might have pursued something else. Who knows?
I don't know about that. I've seen some guys that are professional and world-class musicians. And it's like everything else, right? There's different levels. There are different levels to everything, right? Like, you grow up when you're younger, you grow up in a small town, and you're probably definitely, in any of the sports, you're probably the best player on the field, right? Most of the time.
Sure.
You get in high school, probably that's 90% of the time all the way through high school. And then you get to college, and then you start playing guys that, I remember it's a big reality. I remember we were playing freshman or sophomore year, and I'm pitching at Boshemer. We're playing Carolina. And I remember it was the first time in my life I started pitching when I was 6 years old. And so by this time I'm 19 or 20, right? It's the first time in my life that I ever had a batter where I wanted him, in the count that I wanted him, with the pitch count. I threw the pitch I wanted to throw in the location I wanted to throw it in, and he beat me. B.J. Surhoff.
Absolutely. First-round draft pick, U.S. Olympian,
and now you
long-time major leaguer.
Yeah, he made a lot more money playing baseball than me, right? but when that happens, that's a very, very weird feeling when that happens, right? You got a guy 2-2, you've busted him in, and now you're setting up your circle change away, and you throw it 6 inches off the plate, 18 inches off the ground, and he tomahawks at the left center field for a home run. And he's running around third base. I mean, I didn't tip my cap to him, but I'm like, this guy's really, really good, right? So I need to do better.
Absolutely. Scott, you mentioned your dad. You've mentioned some of your coaches growing up. Who are some of the other people that helped you along the way to get you to Bowie's Creek?
You know what? One of the reasons that I'm even sitting here talking to you now is less about me, and it's more about the people that invested in me, right? Put time, energy, effort, knowledge. I had great coaches my whole life coming up. my high school baseball coach was a guy named Greg Norris. And everybody now talks about the two, the big thing in Whiteville now is the two best pitchers that have ever pitched at Whiteville High School are either Tommy Green, right, or Mackenzie Gore.
Right.
And Mackenzie's my cousin.
Right.
And so I watched him. I played against Tommy. But there's actually a third name that gets left out, Greg Norris. So Greg Norris pitched at Whiteville for 4 years, went to North Carolina, went to 2 College World Series, 2-time All-American. In 1979, he was the #1 pick in the draft by the Atlanta Braves. Big guy, 6'5", through low to mid-90s in the 70s, right? He hurt his arm, and then he was done. So he came back. He wasn't going to be able to go coach at Whiteville with Coach Hedgepeth there. So he came to West. And, had him, then in American Legion for 4 years. I had a guy named Sterling Coward that played for the Phillies, played second base for the Phillies, spent 7 or 8 years in the minor leagues. He had a stint in the big leagues with them, was a really good hitter. And so, just having those people in your life, and then I look at coming here and having Coach Koonce and Coach Caldwell. So in high school, in baseball, in my baseball high school and college career, all 4 of my head coaches were big leaguers. And 3 of them were pitchers that had made it to that level. One of them was a position player, but he knew a lot about the game, right?
Sure.
And so, when I look back on that, I mean, that's just God blessing me. That's just putting me in a situation to be around guys that knew more than me that I could learn from. And, every one of those guys were better than I ever thought about being. But I was better by being around them because I learned from them. I learned situational, how to pitch backwards, how to, if you're going to, now you go through, if you get to the 5th inning, you're done. Then you bring your 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, but you handed me these stat sheets. You can look at these stat sheets back in the 70s and 80s and even in the 90s in college baseball and professionally. It wasn't like that. Like if you're going good, you're going 7 innings, right? And so, you have to learn. First time through the lineup, you pitch a certain way. Second time through the lineup, you may change a little bit. And then if you can get a guy out early with something, maybe he doesn't even see your best pitch until his 3rd time up if you can get by facing him the first 2 times in 6 or 7 pitches. And so those are all things that I learned over my career that I think really helped me. And we sit here and talk about Corey. Corey was our ace, right? After Marty and those guys left, Corey was the ace. And then Barry came in, and so we had Barry came in, and then Caldwell came in that year, and he was a couple of years younger than us. Caldwell was a lefty. Barry was a lefty. They fell in love with each other, as they should. Sure. And so, Caldwell came to me, and he says, I talked with Koonce, and, I know you had a really good fall your junior year, but I know you think you're going to be the number 2, but you're going to be the number 3, and here's why. And he's like, we're going right, left, right, right? Hard thrower, the lefty, and then I was somewhere from a speed-wise in between those 2, more like Barry, but coming from the other side, right? And, I was like, well, that makes sense. Let's go. Right? Like how we grew up is a lot different than, the social media world that kids live in today. I grew up thinking that no matter what sport you were playing, everyone had a role, okay? So if I was fortunate enough to be a pretty good shooter in high school and, I was getting 20 shots a game, I never looked at it as, well, I'm getting this. I always looked at it as, well, this is my role on this team. Sure. You got guys that are rebounders, point guards that are facilitating. Everyone has a role, and everybody is part of a bigger body, right? Absolutely. And if you cut the arm off, if you cut a finger off, or if you cut a leg off, the body's not complete. And so my parents instilled that in me, and these coaches did, that it's not about you, right? Mm-hmm. It's a team concept, and if the team wins, you're going to succeed too. And I am really blessed and fortunate that my parents were givers. They were those type of people. Mm-hmm. And I can honestly say that growing up in all sports that I played all the way through when my playing days were over, I never considered the fact of who's the best player on the team. Mm-hmm. I never looked at it like that. I always looked at it like everybody has a role. Sure. Right? And I think that, I hate to sound old, but we've kind of gotten a little bit away from that. And I think, I really do believe that the college game, Chris and I talk about this all the time, the college game used to be about feel and changing speeds and in and out and up and down and moving the ball around, umpire gets a strike, you get a strike, but when you get 2 strikes, you spread out, and the third strike's for the team. Right? Mm-hmm. You hit the ball the other way, you put it in play, you make something happen. And I think we went through a period in college baseball where the AI and the analytics came in really strong, and it is a great tool, right? Mm-hmm. But it is a piece of the pie. Sure. And I think that now, it was throw 95. Mm-hmm. But then if it's 95 straight and everybody learns to hit 95 straight, your advantage is taken away. Correct. And so, and Chris, he tells me, I think that's right. I think the game incrementally, piece by piece, is going a little bit back to somewhere in between, mm-hmm. right? You got to have velo. We care about bat speed, but your movement and changing speeds and learning to pitch backwards and just learning how to get guys out. Sure. Right? Not just throwing hard, but learning how to get guys out and set hitters up. I think that we got away from that, and hopefully things get back to that somewhat.
In your college days, I don't know how many people can say this. Well, of course, you and your teammates can say this, but you had the benefit of, like you mentioned, not 1 but 2 longtime professional baseball pitchers coaching you. Cal Koonce, 10-year big leaguer, member of the 1969 Amazing Mets. Before that, he was a junior college All-American here at Campbell, recruited you, coached you your first 2 years. Then he leaves, and Mike Caldwell, who's from Tarboro, another North Carolina guy, had a great career, All-American at NC State, was a Cy Young runner-up with the Brewers and pitched in the World Series. He comes in. Let's just take them one at a time. Tell us what you learned from Cal and what you learned from Mike.
So if you draw a sheet of paper in half and you put Coach Koonce on one side and Coach Caldwell on the other side, and you write down the 10 qualities and characteristics that stand out to you between the two, mm-hmm. there's only 2 or 3 of them that are the same on both pages. Right. They're completely different individuals. They went about it differently. Mm-hmm. Cal came along before him, right? Cal was a disciplinarian. He cared about your dress. He cared about how you carried yourself, right? You were going to be in better shape than anybody you played. Mm-hmm. Like as pitchers, we go to the track and run, and then we come to practice. And then at the end of practice, it was automatic down the right field line, and he would go stand in center field, mm-hmm. and we'd get our glove, and we'd sprint and toss it to him, and then we'd run to the left field line and catch it. And if anybody dropped it, we'd start over. He was that type of guy. So then, disciplinarian, made you better, never afraid of a challenge, which Caldwell wasn't either, but they just coached differently, right? He was more of like a father figure. Mm-hmm. Caldwell, on the other hand, and I think the first 2 years having him here for not only me, but for Henry and Corey and Trexler and all of us guys that were here then, mm-hmm. that came in that didn't have a lot of experience, Koonce was the perfect fit for us.
Sure.
He helped us grow up. He held us accountable, right? Win, lose, or draw. We had an opportunity because we didn't know it at the time, but the year before all of us got here, they lost a lot of pitching. They had some studs, right? Marty Warren, you go into Cloninger, right?
Darren
Cloninger. You go into Joe Stevenson, Steamboat, one of the greatest pitchers that ever pitched here, right? So they had a lineage of guys that had gotten drafted from here that were pitchers. But all teams are kind of set up and recruited differently. So we benefited as young players, as freshmen and sophomore, because we had a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball that came back, but we had very little pitching. So Coach Koonce, honestly, that first year, he probably had to suffer with some of us young guys in a situation that if he'd have had a little bit more experience pitching, we wouldn't have pitched so much as freshmen.
Sure.
Probably would have been the same, the same number of innings as sophomores that we had, right? But he really helped us grow and mature. And so then, he leaves. Good for him. He's going to take the Fayetteville Generals GM position, right? That's a lifelong dream with him being a person from that area, helping grow baseball in that area. And he had done some great things here. And then you bring Caldwell in. So best example I can give you, very first day of practice, Caldwell comes in, introduces himself. We're in the outfield shagging balls, hitters hit. He calls us together for a meeting. He goes, okay, practice tomorrow, right? See you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. All of us pitchers, we grab our gloves and grab a baseball and we go down the right field line, and we're standing there. He's walking over to his white Ford Bronco truck, right? That he used to park behind the dugout on the home side now that used to be the visiting side, right?
Absolutely.
And we turn around and we're like, Coach, you're not going to center field. He's like, what do you guys do? And we're like, we're here to run. He said, okay, if you think you need to run, run. If you don't, go home. But then when I started talking to him about his philosophy on pitching and how he got to that point, then I realized Koonce was more old school. Running was a part of it, legs, endurance, right? Using your legs to push off, and your lower body was where you generated all of your power from. Then you get somebody like Caldwell. Well, Caldwell had worked out a couple of years with Steve Carlton. Steve Carlton, all-time great Hall of Fame pitcher, and Coach is borderline, right?
Sure.
Coach was great. 2 World Series wins. Didn't he throw a 3-hit shutout in Game 1 of the World Series?
He was incredible.
Incredible, right? Close to a couple of hundred wins in the big leagues. But he was one of the first pitchers, and he learned that from Steve Carlton. He got into weight room and worked out and built his upper body up.
Right.
He thought that you could generate, it depended on what type of pitch you were, but he was more of a pitch down, right? And so he built his upper body and his legs up through weights, and maybe didn't run as much as a lot of the older guys before him, which is kind of like, now it's somewhere in the middle, right? And so 2 totally different techniques. Both of them work. Both of them had success doing that, but they came at it from a different angle. But one of the benefits of, we did a little weightlifting when Coach Koonce was here, but when Caldwell was here, we were in the weight room. And I think that for those of us that maybe, when we grew up, you didn't lift that much in high school, right? We did a little bit here, but I think Caldwell coming in and making us get in the weight room and build our bodies up, I think it took a year. But then by the time we all came back as seniors, and all of us had put 10, 15 pounds on, I think it really made a difference with how physical we were as a team. And I think it benefited us greatly our last year here.
Your freshman year, March 30th, 1985, first-year Radford program comes in here into to Bowie's Creek to face the team that led the nation in home runs that year. Long story short, Marty Warren throws a shutout. Campbell hits 10 home runs as a team. 38-0 final score, and your classmate, Henry Rochelle, hits 5 in a game, NCAA record at the time. You know, Mickey Mantle never hit 5 in a game. Willie Mays never hit 5 in a game. Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth. What do you remember about that day, Scooter?
I remember being in the dugout and watching that in person, and you know, Corey and myself and Henry, you know, he's out there doing this, and it was kind of the middle of the game, because I think maybe the first couple of at-bats he had, he didn't homer. Mm-hmm. And then he hits one, and then he hits another one, and he's like 5 for 5 with 2 home runs. And we're like, okay, right? And then he hits another one, and it's like the 7th inning. And I remember he came in the dugout, and by this time, he came in the dugout and sat down. No one talked to him.
Oh, wow. Almost like a no-hitter in pitching?
We all got up and just left him alone. And I remember Coach Koonce comes over, and, you know, we're all having to go get the home run balls.
Sure.
Right? So we're getting our running in by chasing all of Henry, and I think Posey hit a couple of home runs that day, right?
He sure did.
And so he hits 2 or 3 home runs that day too, and nobody even cares that he played that day, right? Right? I mean,
and John led the country in home runs that year.
So, just something else for John to get mad about, right? But anyway, so I remember he comes in the dugout. He's like 7 for 7 with 4 home runs. And I remember Coach goes up to him and he says, "Henry, you've had a perfect day. I'm going to take you out." And Henry said, "Coach, it looks like a beach ball coming up there." And he goes, "You played a great game. I'm going to take you out. You've had a perfect day." And Henry goes, "Can I stay in?" And he goes, you know, I could tell Koonce was thinking, right? Mm-hmm. He's a baseball guy. He understands the numbers better than us young kids do. And I remember he thought about it, and he walked back over to him, and he goes, "You really want to stay in?" And he said, "Yeah, Coach." And he said, "You know what, Henry? It's your decision." And so I remember that in the bottom of the 8th, I don't know how many outs there were, but I remember they bring their closer in. Mm-hmm. They brought their closer in, and I'm like, okay, you're in a 35-0 game, 36-0 game, whatever. The closer comes in, and he brushes him back with the first pitch. Mm-hmm. I can't remember but I know he brushes him back, right? Henry's moving out of the box. Maybe he throws a pitch outside and he fouls it off, and then he hung a slider on the inside half of the plate, and he hits it about 400 feet to left center field, and we are just going crazy. I mean, and Henry's like, you remember the Jordan when he hit all the threes in the finals, and he's got his hands up like, I don't know what's going on? Henry comes back in the dugout, and Coach is just like, we're like, this is incredible. Like, this is college baseball. This is D1 baseball. We're not in Little League playing on a 200-foot fence, right? I mean, these are real guys that are trying to get him out. And so that was you know, number one, Henry being the great friend that he is, very, very thankful and happy for him. What a great player and a great all-around athlete. You know, you talk about all-around athletes.
Sure.
Probably could have played football if he hadn't got hurt at Carolina. Could dunk a basketball any way at 6'1", 6'2", that you needed it, could shoot it. Koonce did that. Koonce really liked recruiting all-around athletes, guys that could play multiple sports, right? And the reason he did that was he thought those guys were competitive, right? Sure. So if you get a baseball player that played football in high school, they're going to be competitive. If they play basketball, then that's and so, you know, Henry, much better hitter than I ever thought about being. But in a lot of ways, Henry and I, where we came from, how we grew up, we never played against each other in high school because Wes was we were a 3A, 4A high school, and then Dixon was a little smaller than us, so we never matched up. But we butted heads for 3 years in American Legion ball. Right. He played at Jacksonville, and I played for Brunswick County. And, you know, I remember facing Henry, and he's, like we talk about, Henry was that type of guy, right? Henry was that dirtbag, that throwback player. He's a guy that you can make 2 good pitches on, and then you make a little mistake, and he's getting just enough wood or just enough aluminum on it to hit it over somebody's head for a single, and instead of it being an out, he's making something happen.
Sure.
He could run, throw. He was just a really great athlete.
You mentioned, Henry having a chance to go play, being recruited by Carolina to be the quarterback on their football team, and you were recruited by Clemson to go play baseball, ECU to play football. You and Henry kind of had a parallel path to Campbell, and I think y'all talked a little bit about coming here. What do you recall those conversations being like, and what was the ultimate deciding factor for both of you?
So you know what, I really believe that God has His hand in everything, right? You look back, I'm sure there were times here as freshmen when we had a bad day that we were like, oh man, because I think that both of us had opportunities to go to UNC Wilmington and play. Both had opportunities to go to East Carolina. Both had opportunities to come here, right? Like, we were small-town country boys from North Carolina, didn't live that far apart, right? Maybe an hour drive apart from each other. Brought up kind of the same way, same principles, same family. Now, Henry's mom and dad, they were a little older than my parents, okay? But I remember, Koonce, instead of coming to see Henry play or me play, we'd play an American Legion game in Jacksonville or one in Leland for Brunswick County, and he would be there because he could see both of us.
Sure.
And so, Henry and I, we were kind of like, he was like, man, my parents are like, what do I do? What do I do? Like, what are you going to do? And we would ask those questions, right? And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to go to Campbell. And he's like, okay, me too, right? Like, and I remember, now this was a godsend. So we came home from church one Sunday, and I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And we come home from church. We're sitting at the kitchen table eating, and a telephone rings, and it's Coach Koonce.
How about that?
And I pick up the phone, and I'm like, yeah. And he goes, Scotty? And I said, yeah. He says, and who knows if it was true or not, but I think it was. He goes, I got this guy from Philly and this guy from up north, and I got this money slotted for you, but I need to know right now if you're coming, and this and this and this. And I'm like, well, if I do come, I think Henry's coming too, right? He's like, great. And so he said, I need to know. You need to tell me now. And I said, okay, Coach. I said, I'm coming. I'm coming to Campbell. And he said, that is awesome. Can't wait for you to get here. We're going to have a lot of fun. I hung the phone up. I went and sat back down. 5 minutes later, the phone rings. I picked the phone up, and he says, Scotty? And I said, yes, sir. He said, this is Coach Wilhelm at Clemson. He said, I need to know. I want you to come. I need to know if you're coming. He said, I've talked with Coach Hedgepeth, and see, we had some battles in American Legion. Sure. Right? We had, when I was a sophomore, probably the best high school games that I was ever a part of was my sophomore year. When I was a sophomore, we played in the American Legion finals in our league against Whiteville. We had 5 D1 players on our Brunswick County team. Now they didn't graduate the same year, right? We had 5 D1 players on our American Legion team. Whiteville had 12 players that got drafted out of high school or played Division I college ball on a 15-man roster.
That's amazing.
And I was pitching against them as a sophomore. Right? So, Tommy Green, Chuck Baldwin,
ACC Player of the Year at
ACC
Clemson.
Player of the Year in '89. Chris Threadgill, who was the younger brother, second baseman who played at Clemson, of his older brother, George Threadgill, who was a first-round pick that year for the Texas Rangers, like 7, 8, or 9 pick in the first round. Right? So their third baseman, Mark Council, played at ECU. Their catcher played at Pembroke. The first baseman played at UNC Wilmington. Winfrey Johnson was on that team from East Bladen.
Oh, yeah.
We when I was a sophomore, I had to pitch against him in high school.
Right.
Okay? He's a dear friend of mine now. He's coaching at Coastal Christian Academy.
Okay.
And they came down a couple of years ago when I went back to West and helped them coach. And, he and I have stayed in touch. One of the best hitters I've ever seen. So he went to East Carolina and may still be the only guy ever to get 25 wins on the mound and hit 50 home runs in his career.
He was amazing.
He was, but he was on the same American Legion team with Tommy Green and Chuck Baldwin and all these guys, right? And then, I had the advantage of having some unbelievable players that I could play with too, so we could try to compete with those guys. I played with Jeff Johnson, who played at UNC Charlotte. Matt Gore, who's a year younger than me, but we played high school together. He went to the Citadel. His senior year, he led the nation in earned run average. And he and I complimented each other in high school because he was a low 90s guy when he was a sophomore. Slider, heavy. He was more like Corey, right? And so I came in. I didn't throw, high 80s, didn't throw quite as hard, but, 12 to 6 curveball, change up, slider, don't throw anything straight to your mama, right? That kind of, so we benefited each other, right? And so, and then, played with a couple of other guys. One guy, Kevin Faison, that played at North Carolina A&T, and then Kenny Myers was our shortstop. He played at Carolina. Yeah. So we had some dog fight battles. No pitch counts back then, right? So I remember we played them in a 7-game series. We open up at Whiteville on a Monday, and we go back and forth each day. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, all 4 of the starts at Whiteville, I started and went 7 innings. I won 2 of those games and lost 2 of those games, and they beat us in a 7-game series in Game 7 there. And I remember, talking about pitch count, I remember walking up that day, and I'm like, well, there's no way I'm pitching. I pitched 3 times in 6 days. And Coach Coward goes, how's your arm feel? I said, Coach, my arm is killing me. It's falling off. And he flipped me the baseball. He said, good, you're starting. So, it was a different mindset. Right. But Tommy, I've seen Tommy Green throw a 1-hitter and strike out 15 and walk 10 guys. Yeah. I mean, when you sit there and think about that now, I'm sure I've seen him pitch games. He threw 200 pitches.
Oh, my goodness.
But now, and I'm sure that cut his career short, right?
Probably did.
So Tommy gets drafted, goes through the minor leagues, pitches for the Philadelphia Phillies, and his claim to fame was he threw a no-hitter in the big leagues for the Phillies. Right. And so, these were when you're a young kid from Ash, North Carolina, and you've grown up on your great granddad's farm, and then you're at 15, 16 years old, you're thrown in the fire against guys that are this good. On one side of it, I took some lumps early, but on the other side of it, I felt like it really prepared me for when I got here. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. Like I had to learn how to pitch in high school. I couldn't wait till I got to college. I had to learn how to change speeds and survive at that level, or I was going to get torched.
Scott, you touched on, we talk about how the game is different now, how college athletics are different now. Facilities were not the reason you came to Bowie's Creek. Chain link fence, a little tobacco barn for a press box, some bleachers on the ground behind the thing. You dressed out in the natatorium and the thing, and how things have changed now. But when you look back on that time, during your time that you were at Campbell, 9 guys went on to play pro ball. Yeah. What was it about that? Was it just, having the opportunity to play at that level, being mentored that, or is it just great recruiting too? I mean, do you kind of, because you look around, it was, chain link fence, there was no stadium, there was no padding on the outfield fence, and, what was it about this place at that time 40 years ago that was such a fertile place to grow baseball players?
You know what? I think that one of Coach Koonce's forte was he was looking for a certain type of player. Okay, and I really do believe this. I think if you look at the characteristics of those teams, and I'm sure if Coach Koonce or if Coach Hardy or any of those guys that played here, right? If Mr. Perry was sitting here right now, he would probably tell you that those teams they played on had the same characteristic, right? But I think whoever started it, and they talk about the brotherhood now, and it's a slogan for the program now, right? Nobody's from nowhere, the brotherhood. I really believe that brotherhood type atmosphere started with Coach Koonce, and I think it was a type of player that he recruited. He didn't just care about your athletic ability. He cared where you fit in as a person, right? He cared about your beliefs. He cared about your morals. He was very interested in your family and how you were raised, right? Like he was looking for a certain type of player. And because he was going to get on you a little bit, and you had to be kind of tough, right? You couldn't be thin-skinned. He was going to ride you when you messed up, and then he was going to praise you when you did good. But the one thing I can say above all else about Koonce, he was fair. I think you'll never talk to anyone that didn't love him, love playing for him, and thought that he was fair with all of his players. Absolutely. He treated every player individually. He didn't treat everybody the same. He knew when a guy needed to be loved on. He knew when a guy needed to be ridden a little bit. And sometimes knowing a player's personality, it may not be the same for every player. Some guys, they go out and they have a bad start, and you ride them, and they're going to have a great start the next time. There are some guys that if they have a bad start and you ride them, they're going to shut down, right? And he knew the personality of the individual, and he took the time to do that. One of the deciding factors of me coming here, he came and saw me pitch 3 or 4 times my senior year in high school. And, him being the flashy guy that he is, he's driving up in like an old Buick Skylark or something, whatever he was driving. Anyway, Grand Marquis or something, right? He never handed me a pamphlet of Campbell, never. And he would say, "You got 10 minutes after a game." And I'd say, "Yeah." And I would literally get in his car with him, and we would sit there, and he'd just talk. He'd say, "Pitched really well tonight. You kept the ball down. You did this. You gave up something here. If you get in that situation, think about doing this." Wow. Right? So I look back now, and what I realized, he was developing a relationship with me then, right? He was creating that pull and that tie with me then that none of the other coaches did, right? Like Overton, loved him as a coach. The reason I was thinking about going to East Carolina was Billy Best. Billy Best was a Brunswick County boy, and his dad, Nelson Best, was our superintendent at the time. And he came to all of our games, and he's like, "Scott, man, you need to go to ECU. Billy's there as an assistant. You'll fit right in." But Billy was busy then, right? And he was the assistant coach, not the head coach. Right. Same thing, Wilmington, right? Like Coach Koonce invested in me. He spent time and energy, even in high school, right? And I look back now and I realize, crazy, I don't know how he knew that I was coming here, but I think he did. And so when I was in high school pitching a game, he was coaching me.
Right. Wow.
At that level. He was coaching me then, pretty sure that he knew that I was coming. And and it wasn't just me, right? Like I'm sure he did the same for Corey. He probably did the same for, all the guys that came before us, right? Like both of the Posey brothers that were great players, right? Mick Cradle, great catcher, right? Loved Mick because he was quiet behind the plate, right? Like Eric. Right. Eric was very quiet, Eric Ellis, great defensive catcher. And when you're young, you need that. Like you need someone that's quiet behind the plate, that's not moving around a lot, right? Those guys would cringe now at all the movement, but different time. But Coach was that type of guy, right? When he believed in someone, he invested in you. And I think that, and I really do believe that's what the brotherhood started there. I think it really started with those teams. People came here and had a lot in common. Their backgrounds were very similar. And, doesn't mean if you're from the South like me or if you're from Jersey like Corey, but you had a lot in common. When we got together and we started talking and getting to know each other, we realized how much in common we had. And that's carried on till now, right? Like that's carried on till now. In 6 weeks, we're going to get together again here. This is the year that we're basically going to have half those guys back from the 84 to 88 teams. The Vinny Manginos, right? The Eric Ellises, Corey, Barry, Henry, all of us get together, and it's a special bond. Like you're on the text feed with us. There's about 20 of us, and we talk every day. And so, you and Claudia, I'm gonna say this: you and Claudia opening your home up all the time, like you do. You allow all of us, I don't know if we're Motley Crue or Misfits or whatever, a little bit of everything, but you open your home up and you allow us to stay with you. You bring us in. I mean, we'll go to the Friday night game here before the Saturday, and we'll be sitting around a bonfire telling stories, right? We laugh, we cry, we talk about the past. I love it, and I think all of us love it because the older we get, the better we work. Right? But I think that, and I really mean this, at any program in America, and maybe I'm recruiting a little bit now, my love for this program, but in any program in America, almost 40 years after the fact, how many guys played together that stay that tight? They come back and they hang out together and they make time for each other.
Absolutely.
So that says everything.
Our guest today on Tales from the Creek is former Campbell Baseball standout Scott Evans. Scott, you talked about similar family backgrounds. I wanted to get you to share with us a little bit about a couple of the families that really kind of took in some of those guys that did not have a chance to go home on an off day or to get home regularly. I think about the family of like Kenny Milton, who just grew up a mile from campus here. Yep. Doug Barefoot's mom is legendary in your group about looking after those guys. How did that help make the Creek feel like home for you guys, especially for guys like, Vinny from up north and Corey and some of these guys? What did that feel like to you?
Well, these guys are a long way away from home, and some of us are a few hours from home, right? And like the Miltons, Mr. and Mrs. Milton, right? I remember many Saturday afternoons after our double headers, they would have a barbecue, right? They would cook for us. I remember, Doug's mom doing that for us on many, many occasions, right? I mean, it was one big family. Like our parents hung out together, right? I remember one of our favorite times, and it probably happened about once a year. I remember Vinny's mom coming down and fixing these softball-sized meatballs, and we're like, I'm a Southern boy, man. I'm not getting really good Italian food very often at that point in my life, right? So I'm like, it was. It's cliche-ish, but it was a real family atmosphere, and people really cared about each other, and they went to bat for each other, and that's still true today, right? It's still true how we rag and pick on each other now after all these years, and we've just always been there for each other, and like I said, I'll put what this place has done for us up against any university in America.
Well, and the brotherhood, as it has been kind of branded here in the last decade, we know that it pre-existed that time, but you're smack dab in the middle of the brotherhood if you think about it. Jim Perry, through Scott Evans, Corey Satterfield, Henry Rochelle, the others, Zach Neto. I mean, how does that make you feel to know that there was that rich history between Mr. Perry and Coach Koonce, and then that great run y'all had in the 80s, and now 6 guys in the big leagues this past year, and the championships that the team has won in the last decade? What does it feel like to be part of that?
You know what? It brings you pride, right? Like you're back to, it doesn't matter whether you have the success. Let's just have success, right? Everyone wins when you're a part of that. Everybody wins. You know, I remember seeing Cedric Mullins take BP for the first time, and I'm like, wow, his hands, he's quick. Like this kid's really good, right? Call him a kid, right? But and then I remember seeing Zach, right? I remember T-Rex, seeing him pitch on the sidelines, right? Like I'm like, man, this guy's coming at you. You can't even see the baseball until it's out of his hand, right? And you know, but we kind of had a lot of those traits. You know, I didn't mention Kenny very much, but you know, you look at Kenny Milton. There were a lot of guys that are in the record books that were on those teams. Like Kenny Milton was an unbelievable closer. Before Ryan Thompson, he was probably the Ryan Thompson before Ryan Thompson.
Absolutely.
Right? He was down from the side and all that. And you know, those teams had experience, great pitching. Henry could start a game in the middle of the week and then play right field. He could come in. We had length out of the bullpen, left, right. Then we'd bring Kenny in to shut games down. We had power on the corners and speed up the middle. You know, you got Randy Hood and James White playing center field. They could run anything down.
And both of them played professionally.
Both of them played professionally. And so, long story short, me and a lot of guys that weren't as talented as some of these guys that we're talking about now, but had an opportunity to compete at that level and play with them, we benefited a lot from those guys' talent. Right, and like I said, we get together now. It doesn't matter, you know. We're just one big family, man. We were just on a magic carpet ride for 4 years together, and that's continued for 40 years now.
I have to touch on before we move on here. Your junior and senior year, y'all, the pitchers, benefit a little bit from Coach Caldwell allowing y'all to bat some. And I want to go back to your senior year, and we have the stat sheet to prove it. And you look at it in the old typewritten stats there. Barry Wilson's name appears at the top. Barry, the left-handed pitcher, he had a 1,000 batting average. He went 1 for 1. But right below him is a guy named Evans who batted an astounding .667 with a home run in 3 at-bats, 2 out of 3. And you're on top of a list with a bunch of guys that were named like Chris Mita and Danny Murphy and the Big South Tournament MVP, Bob Palanchar. Do you still remember that home run?
I do.
You want to tell us about that one?
Listen, this is a perfect example of the differences between the two coaches, okay? So, you know, Corey and Henry and I have talked about this. So, you know, in high school, in American Legion ball, right? My sophomore, junior, and senior years at my high school, and even in American Legion ball, I hit in a 3-hole, right? I hit 400 in high school, 380 in American Legion. You know, between the two, hit 6, 7, 8 home runs. Hit a few more than that my junior and senior year. But, you know, for that level, I was a pretty good high school hitter, right? Playing on that side of the ball. And, you know, Corey the same and Henry the same. Of course, Henry, but in Barry, right? Same thing. And so we get here, and he never said this in the recruiting process, but we get here, and I remember 2 things distinctively. He goes, "What number were you in high school?" I said, "I've not worn but 7 my whole life in baseball." He said, "That resembles an earned run average. You can't have a single-digit number." That's Cal, right? So Corey comes up to me. He's like, kind of the same situation. He's like, "Oh, no. Well, what adds up to that?" And Corey's like, "I want 25. I said, "Great. Take 25. I'm like, what numbers do you have that add up to 7? And the first thing they pulled out was 16. So he's like, you're 16.
How about that?
And I'm like, but Koonce wouldn't let pitchers hit. He was afraid that you were going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. Now, I was at a game here a couple of years ago. NC State's here. Mm-hmm. And they let Carlos Rodon go to bat because he was a pretty good hitter.
Right.
And you know how good he was, right?
Sure.
All-American, pitching with the Yankees now. I saw him hit a ground ball to shortstop and try to beat it out and pull a hamstring. Mm. And he was out for like a month. And so now I look back and I'm like, well, Cal was just, he's going to do everything textbook. He's going to do it by the book. Caldwell, on the other hand, goes, he's looking at me and he goes, well, you're never playing professionally. He's like, okay. So I'm like, and we'd hit in practice.
Sure.
So we take the starters, okay, and then he would let somebody pitch for them, mm-hmm. like an assistant or something, and then he would take the pitchers and we would play outfield, and he'd let the second team infield play, and he would pitch for us.
Right.
He's just raking people.
Sure he is.
He's just striking everybody out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we on a road trip, we're like, Coach, we were all good hitters in high school. He said, I'll let you start taking some batting practice. So we took batting practice, and nothing turned out our junior year. But we came back in our senior year, and he started letting us hit in scrimmages and stuff a little bit. And he's like, I tell you what I'll do. He goes, you and Corey and Barry, you don't get to hit like Henry. He goes, I'll give you one at-bat your senior year if the situation's right. Mm-hmm. So Corey gets a situation like that. He was first, right? Let Corey go. He's the stud ace. Let him get the first at-bat. He gets a hit. Mm-hmm. Then Barry comes in a few games later, and he puts him in, and he hits like a short hops a double off the wall or something. So then I remember we were playing against I think we were playing Rhode Island. Rhode Island here, and he's not their closer, but he's a guy throwing from the side. And I remember there's like an out or two in the 8th inning, and Caldwell walks over and he says, Scooter, you're on deck. If this guy gets on, you're hitting. And I'm like, I don't even have time I'm like, does anyone have batting gloves I can have, right? Like, okay, I'm stealing batting gloves from Henry or somebody, right? So, he gets on, I go up, he brushes me inside, I take a strike outside, it's 1-1, and I don't even know how it happened. I hadn't hit in like 4 years, right? He throws me like a slurve from the side, inside, it's inside belt high, and I hit it out in left center field. And, everybody's going crazy. Letizia, he's going crazy. And this will tell you everything you need to know about Caldwell. So I step on second, and I make eye contact with him, and he puts his head down. And I get to him, and I fist pump him, and he fist pumps me back, and I take a couple of steps toward home. And I heard him, he's like, I'm never gonna live this down. I'm never gonna quit hearing the end of this, right? And so we played loose, right? That was kind of the team that we had at that mm-hmm. point. Caldwell he had a very experienced team.
He did.
That Cal had put a lot into, and he kept some of that, but he changed a little bit of the personality. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe for the better. Like, we weren't boastful, but we weren't cocky, but we were very confident, and we played loose, right? We played loose. Like, we felt like we had a good club. We felt like we had a top 20 club that year, mm-hmm. and it panned out that way, right? Still, the biggest letdown of my career was us not getting in then, because I really felt like, we go through, win the league, mm-hmm. We pound Carolina 19-5 here that year. We're beating up on people. We have a great year. We go into the tournament and run through the tournament, mm-hmm. right, and win the Big South for the first time. I felt like if we would have gotten in as an at-large, mm-hmm. right, we didn't get an automatic bid because the league hadn't been around that long. Mm-hmm. But if they had put us in, I really feel, and it's easy for me to say now looking back, but I really feel like we'd have been able to make a run at it with our length, right? Because we had 4 really good starters when you put Henry in there, and then we had some good length out of the bullpen, and I mean, we could swing it with anybody.
Yeah. And that team, a lot of people, we play a lot of games every year, and it's been a while since then. But if you go back in the record books and look at the results from the 1988 Big South Championship, the final score in the championship game was Campbell 17. It was Baptist College, now Charleston Southern, 0. You put a football score on those guys.
Well, I think they to what we're talking about, you get in tournaments, you get in these 3-day tournaments where you can play 4 and 5 games, and your depth really shows up, right?
Right.
I mean, we've seen that a couple of years ago. We were in the driver's seat at East Carolina, and all we got to do is win 1 out of 2, right? And we lose the first game, and kind of ran out of pitching, and then they blew us out in the second game. Kind of the same thing happened in Columbia a few years ago where we have it set up.
Sure.
So when you get in those situations, winning the first game is huge. But when you win the first 2, it really sets you up, right? And if you have a starter go out there who's been your ace all year, your number 2, and they get knocked out early, and then you got to bring your 3 or 4 in before you want to.
Right.
I think when you run out of arms in this sport at this level, it shows up really quickly.
It sure does. Scott, you graduated in 1988 with a business degree. Following graduation, share with us just a little bit about your career path.
Well, there again, one of the things I said I was never going to do was go back to Brunswick County, right? I was going to graduate from here. I remember that I had gone and taken an interview with UCB here, right, in Dunn, maybe go to work for them, do something in the banking industry. And my grandfather calls me up one day, and he says, I'm thinking about slowing down a little bit. Your dad needs somebody to come in and help him. And my granddad, really, really smart guy, great business person. He goes, you know what? Come do this for a couple of years. And if you don't like it, great. Go do what you want to do. And so that, when I look back now, that was 37 and a half years ago, right? I mean, and so, it's, there again, you look at my youth through high school, through college, now into my career, right? Having an opportunity to benefit from people that had come before me, and I could learn from those guys. So what I did was I used that same attitude, that same work ethic, and I put that in my career, right? I saw my grandfather, I saw my dad go through the independent insurance agents of North Carolina. He was the chairman of the board for the state of North Carolina. Then he was the state national director. Then he served on the National Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America's board, right? Sure. He worked with them on their PAC raising funds and did that, right? So I saw, my dad's the type of person, he says you can't do but about 3 or 4 things well. You pick those 3 or 4 things, and then you throw yourself in them. And if you're going to do something, you do it all the way, right? So, he's that way about Campbell. He's that way about West Brunswick. He's that way about his faith. He's a Gideon, deacon at his church. He only does about 3 or 4 things, and then his career path. But if he was going to do it, how those old school guys are, they were going to do it all the way.
Right.
And so I benefited. My grandfather started our family business in 1948, okay? So in a couple of years, our family agency will be 80 years old.
Wow.
Okay, so a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of hard work that went in before I ever stepped foot in that place. So, my job was not to screw it up. Seriously, my job was to pick up the torch, be thankful for the opportunity that I had been given, and to carry that forward and to try to grow that business. And, I think we've been pretty successful in doing that and continuing that. And I'm very proud of the things that we've done there in the last especially the last 50 years. And, the area growing's been very good to us, right? Been very good to real estate, very good in the insurance industry, very good in the car industry in those areas just because of the number of people that are moving to Brunswick County.
Scott, the insurance it's a business, but there's also a service element to it, right?
Listen, it's a servant's heart, right? Like in our world, I have a meeting next Thursday with a client, an association, and we have the opportunity and the pleasure and the fortune of insuring that association, and Barry lives in there sometimes. So during the last snowstorm that we had, they had some situations there, and I'm going down to their meeting to let them know that we've taken care of them, and we appreciate the opportunity to do that, and I take a lot of pride in making sure that when someone believes in us and our business to take care of them, that if something happens, that we put them back whole. That's our obligation and that's our duty, and that's kind of how we're known in our community, right? It's kind of serving others is the highest call, right? And so that's what we're called to do by the Lord, and that's what I take a lot of pride in doing. And I think we've done that day to day. We've done a pretty good job to that over that almost 80 years, and we've been blessed and very fortunate.
Scott, you mentioned doing 3 or 4 things well. I mean, obviously, your interest and your love for this place and your support for this place here at Campbell is keen. You've also been involved with Brunswick Community College and the North Carolina Community College Association. Tell us a little bit about your work down there with them.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I know when you did an interview with Mr. Koonce, he's involved down in Fayetteville as well, and I see him twice a year. We go to the North Carolina Community College Association meetings, and he walks in the room, and I'll see his silhouette, and he always walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, Scotty, you thought Coach just walked in?" And I go, "Yeah," we have a chuckle, right? Because they look alike,
sure.
Right? They look alike. But, it gets back to being involved, right? Being involved in your community, being involved where you went to school, being involved in your family business or your job, your career, wherever you are. I mean, there's a certain amount of appreciation that you have for where you are, and then there's a certain amount of responsibility to give back, right? And so, I went back for a few years and was a pitching coach at West a few years ago. Stepped away from that when my dad retired, roles changed. I stepped into the president's role at the agency. My role changed. I didn't have quite the time. And so when I stepped away from the baseball thing, I'm like, okay, well, what can I do? So I got involved in the community college at BCC. Great baseball program there. Robbie Allen, that played at Whiteville and also played at Clemson and also played for Oakland. He's the head baseball coach there. And they have 4 or 5 kids a year that go play D1 after 2 years ago, they got beat in the national championship game by LSU Eunice, and he has a top 20 program in America every single year. They have a great baseball program. And so, my involvement in BCC at the trustee level, something we haven't talked about, but, at Campbell, being involved in athletics, giving back, right? Here with the press box and the coach's office, and now we're talking about the expansion of the next stadium, right? And continuing to grow that. And Chris knows that we're all in on that, right? I mean, this place has done a lot for us, and it deserves to have us do a lot for it.
That was what I was coming to next. You've been a member of Hannah Bazemore's AD's advisory board since its conception, and head that up right now. What does that mean to you, and what's the board's goals?
Well, just her calling me and asking me to be there and be a part of that was, a privilege. It's a great time to be involved now. With Campbell going from the Big South to the CAA, it's a step in the right direction. That's a big step. I think it's I think it benefits the university academically and athletically. But I'm the type of guy that if you make a decision, you make that decision, and then you do whatever you have to do to make that decision the right decision. So I'm the type of guy that when I step in a room with 10 bankers and I look at a P&L sheet and they may know how to read it better than me, I'm the guy that goes, will you read the P&L sheet? I'll go make the numbers bigger. And you need both of those, right?
Sure.
You need people going out, getting people involved. This athletic world that we live in now with NIL and the transfer portal and all the things that are going on, even at the mid-major level, is crazy, right? So like Campbell, we're going to get really good players like a Neto, right? Like a Ryan Thompson. And when we get those players, we may not be going to steal a player away from a Power 4 league, but what we need to do is we need to have enough money to keep what we have. Because, Godwin, I talked with Coach, talked with Chris, Randy Hood, who was a teammate for 2 years with us, 2 years younger than our class, done an incredible job at UNC Wilmington, right? I text Randy this morning. I always wish him luck and call him on game day at the beginning of the year. Say, stay healthy, right? Have a great year. Go reset the record books at Wilmington. He's done a great job there, but, a lot of these mid-major programs the last couple of years, they're losing players because they're being paid. So, we may not go pay a pitcher $200,000 to come here and play to transfer, but what we have to do is we have to be sustaining enough, and we have to be economically in a situation that we have enough funds that we can keep a player when he's a really good player and he means a lot to the program. And so being involved with Hannah and Nathan and you and all the great people that are in the athletic department here, and there's some great individuals here. Right? I mean, you know what I think of you and your family. Hannah, love her, love Nathan. Quality people that love Campbell, went to school here. They're invested in this program, could probably go other places and make more money than they make here, but they stay because they love the program and they want to make a difference. And I am really looking forward to the next couple of years being on the advisory committee, because I think the CAA move is going to bring some funds to us, not only from a conference standpoint. We just got to get out and fundraise, right? We got to get out and fundraise, and we got to keep, what's going on in basketball right now, right? Looks like they've had a tough year on paper, but those 6-7 games they played early in the year against, top 40 talent. He needs those funds to be able to go get those great players to come here that take us to another level. And so that's what we need to do. We just need to keep growing the program. The RMI program, I got to mention this. So a couple of years ago, my involvement in Big I, North Carolina and Big I National, so I was chairman of Big I, North Carolina in 2013. Then they let you hang around as a has-been for a few years. And then when they kick you off the board, you just drop off the face of the earth, right? Okay. And that's okay. Time for somebody else to do it. So I followed Dad's path in that. I saw the benefit of being involved at a state and a national level. And he's always been right about doing that and being hands-on and being involved. But, I watched the program grow at App State in the insurance industry and risk management. I watched the program be started and grow at UNC Charlotte, and then I watched the program start and grow at East Carolina. And Big I of North Carolina actually has an agency that is a for-profit agency that is separate but also in the same building as the non-for-profit, right, that benefits the insurance agents for the state. So that agency has one account. We insure the state of North Carolina. So every governmental building, every automobile, the USS North Carolina, if Lady Di's dresses come for a display downtown Raleigh, there's a schedule written on that. And so we started talking a couple of years ago, why can't we have an RMI program at Campbell, right? The rest of them are public schools, but there's some private schools that have done it very, very well nationally. And so I am really excited and proud and have an opportunity to vice chair that board this year and next year. But we hired a lady that used to teach here, Dr. Michelle Osborne, used to be a professor here.
Right.
She then went and was the Deputy Commissioner of Insurance for the state of North Carolina. She stepped down from that role to come back to Campbell to head that program up. And then a guy that, other than my dad, is probably my number one mentor, a guy named Stuart Powell. Stuart Powell, for the agency, he was the guy that ran the for-profit agency that insures the state of North Carolina. So what we do is we insure the state, but we insure it at such a small percentage number that we keep the private market out of it. And then once we're paid from those companies, all that money goes into surplus funds. Those surplus funds are then given back to the state in fire safety, fire prevention, education. And one of the pieces of the pie of the educational field of it is that we've been able to start these RMI programs at these universities and then fund them every year. So Campbell now has that backing from IIA&C. Stewart's here along with Dr. Osborne teaching that program. It's a year old now. And I am super proud and super excited about that. I think that could be a game changer for Campbell down the road. They're looking at doing some specialty things within the insurance world and in the aviation field, tying that into Fort Bragg. There's just some really cool things that we have a blueprint to grow that program, because who doesn't need insurance, right?
Absolutely.
I'm an insurance guy, right? So everyone's got to have it, and somebody's writing it for you, and so we always took the approach, why not us?
Scott, I have to ask this. You touched a little bit on the Evans Family Press Box, the work that y'all have done to support the baseball program and the university in general. What compels you and your family to give?
Well, we didn't get here by ourselves, right? All of us are a product of the environment and the people that have been around us in our entire lives. They built who we are is accumulation of where we've come from and the life that we've lived and who's impacted that. And, I just know what this place has done for me. I know, my dad went to school here. My uncle went to school here. My great uncle went to school here. My son went to school here. And so, I went back and listened to Corey, and I went back and listened to a couple of these podcasts that you've done. One of the common threads through all of those is that at some point in that, you've heard everyone say, this is a special place. And it really is. Like, it's a place we call home, right? We have our homes. Have my home in Brunswick County. Have my insurance family, right? But I have my Campbell family. And they're not just my Campbell family, they're my family, right? Like, we've grown up together, we've succeeded together, we've failed together, we've learned. But what this place has done for our family, I can't even put in words. It's been a blessing and a gift. It's special.
Scott, I like to ask folks who've been there what kind of advice they would give to a young person just starting out their college career. And with you, you have a pretty special and not necessarily unique, but it's a rare opportunity to give that advice to your son, who was a Division I football player here at Campbell. What kind of advice did you give Christian when he was starting out his college road?
Well, I let my dad do that. I let my dad do that because, like I know that, when I think when I probably came here, my dad didn't know anything. And then the older I got, it's amazing how smart he is. So he let my grandfather do that with me. I think it skips a generation, right?
Okay.
And they're really, really close, and I'm kidding about that. But all jokes aside, Christian's been in the agency now for 6 years. He's just got married about a year ago, loving life, great wife, doesn't have any kids yet. He's got a dog and a cat, thank God. That's good for now. Maybe he can make a little money, right? But anyway, I'm very proud of him. He's come in, got his nose bloody, but he's recovered from that. I think it takes 4 or 5 years to learn how to be halfway decent at anything, and he's really grown a lot. And I'm very proud. First of all, 4 generations, right? That he's come in and he could have went and done anything, right?
Sure.
He graduated from here, political science major. Could have taken the attorney route or done whatever, right? But I'm very proud that he decided to come back and kind of pick the ball up and carry that torch forward, right? And so, like I said, Campbell's just a really, really special place. It's a place that when you step on campus here, like you feel it. Like I don't know how many times I've been on this campus since I graduated, but it's the same, feels the same.
Finally, Scott, can you put into words how Campbell University and this Buies Creek community have impacted your life?
Oh, man. You know what? This community is the people, right? It's the people that are here. Another fit that worked out for me, and you'll know what I mean by this. Harnett County people are like Brunswick County people. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I mean, they're salt of the earth, hardworking, down to earth. They're just great individuals, right? They get up and they do their jobs every day. They're people like Lou Holt said. I was listening to something him yesterday. Don't tell anybody your problems because 90% of the people don't care and the other 10% are glad you have them. Right? It doesn't do any good to tell anybody your problems, right? And so, kind of going full circle, when I look back at making a decision to come to this place, the whole thing, from coach getting involved and then the other coaches around steering me and then the decision with the phone calls 5 minutes apart and, then coming here and being involved, but then you go through a period of time for a few years and we've all been through this with family and kids. You raise your family, you go out there trying to get it and make as much money as you can and take the kids to Disney and let them grow up, and you got to get them through middle school and then high school, and then they get off and graduate, and then you start coming back and doing more, right? You get more involved and you plug in, and there's a time for all of that, right? There's a season for all of that, and I truly do believe that. And I tell Chris, and you and I have talked about this, the importance of succeeding athletically at Campbell now. It's not just succeeding today, but the people that are here now that have good experiences, those are the ones that are going to carry those feelings and those good experiences forward. And they're the ones that in 10 and 15 and 20 and 30 and 40 years from now, those are the people that are going to come back that are going to impact and give to this university and give to baseball and basketball and football. They're the ones that are going to come back and give to athletics. I have seen between the time that we left and the time that Greg got here, I've seen that window where there were some great players, but they maybe didn't have as much success as they felt like they should. Mm-hmm. And it is really hard to get those guys to come back and be a part, especially monetarily.
Right.
There's something about being a part of a winning program that you carry that pride forward, and in carrying that and having an appreciation for that, it's reciprocal, right? It makes you come back with a full heart saying, this place has been good to me. It's time for me to be good to it.
I'm Stan Cole, and our guest today on Tales from the Creek has been former Campbell Baseball standout Scott Evans. Thank you, Scott, for sharing your Tales from the Creek.
Thank you, Stan.